Welcome to the richness of our lives. I'm Mary Scott, and this is where we celebrate the wisdom, courage, and stories that shape us. Every 2 weeks, I sit down with entrepreneurs, coaches, and remarkable people who've walked through fire and come out transformed. This isn't just about success. It's about the richness of the human experience. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's dive deep. Hello and welcome to the Richness of Our Lives podcast. I'm your host, Mary Scott. And if this is your first time you're tuning in, your timing is impeccable and I welcome you. Now I've got a very special guest today. I'm thrilled actually to be introducing you to her. She comes and resides right now in the most magnificent island of Vanuatu. So if I've set you off on the envy stick, yes, be that, do that. And, you know, this woman comes, well, with a wealth of wisdom, a wealth of knowledge, and she's considered as Australia's leading keynote speaker on resilience. And I can tell you what I know of this woman. That's a very good way to describe it. But the other thing about her is that education is probably her middle name. She's educated many people around the globe. Let me introduce you to Heidi Dening. Hello, Heidi.
Hello, Mary. So lovely to be here with you.
It's just gorgeous. The flowers behind you, your earrings, everything about it is colour. You're in the Pacific. I couldn't think of anything better. Well, a better place to be, more is the point. Now, I talked about a little just then about education, and you became a teacher, and you had the fortunate time, what should I say, the fortunate opportunity to take yourself to Vanuatu at age 20. Then what happened? Why on earth did you choose Vanuatu?
Well, I would like to be able to tell you it was because I knew this, that, and about the culture, and I wanted to immerse myself more. But to be honest with you, my college at our final teaching thing, we went. They had an arrangement in the UK where us as teachers, were about to become teachers, would go to the fancy pants boarding schools in the UK where Prince Charles and things went, and in return for being able to have a bed and be fed, you would do boarding house duties and then do your prac during the day for 3 months. Now, this was September, October, November, December, which we all know is not the best time to be in the UK. And I am allergic to being cold, absolutely allergic. And so I said to my college, I'm not going. I'm just not going, being, you know, a little feisty thing that I was at 20. And they said, okay, well, you pick a place. If we can make it happen, we'll make it happen. So I picked Vanuatu solely based on the fact that I knew it was a tropical Pacific island. It was going to be warm. There'd be palm trees and I'd get to swim. And if it meant that I got to learn something about teaching, that was an added bonus. Little did I know, Mary, that it was going to be a complete sliding door moment of my life. And it was.
And you know, it's fascinating to me when we make choices at 20, you know, 19, 20, 26 there, that we have no idea the implications of those choices. And you know, you're testament to that it opened up another world, another adventure. And how did you find it? Like going boarding school, the cold, like it'd be just magic, or was it? You know what I mean?
Well, it was, and all my friends who just went with the status quo were very jealous of me, of course, that I had stuck up my head and said, I don't want to do it that way. Let's adapt and find a new way, because, you know, that's life, isn't it? You know, if we don't quite like that path, why shouldn't we explore and get curious about what else is possible? But it was magic. I got a complete culture shock. I didn't realize that it was such a developing nation. I didn't realize that, and this is because I'm so naive at that age, right? I just had no comprehension. I didn't realize that my students would be sleeping on the floor with no electricity, no running water. I didn't realise that education was such a privilege here that we take for granted, in where I came from in Australia. And, but these children would come to school with crispy white shirts for their school uniform because they were so proud to have a school uniform, and they had big smiles on their face, and all they wanted to do was learn. And I just couldn't believe how lucky I was to be in an environment where, it just changed my perspective about the importance of education, I suppose, and that we cannot take it for granted because not everybody gets to have it. And it is a privilege, and we are privileged. Millions of us are very privileged because we get access to education, and not everybody in the world gets that. And so that was the first shock, I suppose, but the greatest learning. And it has shaped so much of who I've become, the choices I've made, the careers I've chosen, the ways I've given back. Everything changed about me from that 3-month period here in Vanuatu when I was 20 and had my 21st birthday while I was here.
Yes, that's lovely. And it's really made a stamp. Here you are.
Yeah.
Living there, living the life. And what's your take now on the education of people like the people that live in Vanuatu and many Pacific nations? Has it changed since you saw it through the 20-year-old's eyes, or what's happened?
Yeah, we're now talking 36 years later. So I actually live a stone throw away from the little staff house that I had when I was 20, which is incredible. And every day on my way from town to home here, I go past the school that I taught in. It's right there. So
that's goosebump stuff, isn't it?
No, it's incredible. I mean, a lot has happened. Vanuatu is the most at-risk natural disaster nation in the world with cyclones, earthquakes. We had a huge 7.4 magnitude earthquake just 14 months ago. Thankfully, it was the two things. It was in the lunch break here. So people were out of their building. Most people were out of their buildings, of course, not everyone, unfortunately. But also schools had already broken up for school holidays. So the school that I teach at, that I go past every day, hundreds and hundreds of children would have been killed during that earthquake because of what happened that day. But what it's meant is buildings are not rectified yet, and so there's a lot of displacement. Children who used to come from different islands to board there are not able to because they don't have the facilities. The boarding houses are they'll have to be bulldozed. So I say this, that's not what's happened over the last 36 years, but things like this are an everyday present here in Vanuatu, which stops education just flowing as we wished it would. And that's the shame about it. And, children, that parents have to pay for secondary schooling here, even like in the public system, or what we define that. So when there has been COVID, cyclones, earthquakes, where the whole country relies really on tourism. So many people have lost their jobs since probably COVID over this period of time. Vanuatu has been hit very hard, and families are struggling, and therefore children don't get to go to school like we hope they would, especially the girls. Boys here usually will, if there's some money, the boys will get to go, not as much for the girls. So things have changed, things have moved forward, Mary, but there are a lot of obstacles, and there are a lot of hopes and dreams for the next generation here. They really do want to be educated. They want to get into the digital world. They want to be able to embrace, all the change that's going on, but there are obstacles that make it a lot harder for them.
Absolutely. And I was listening because I'm aware, having visited Vanuatu a long time ago, but I've always had the Pacific and, islands in Pacific in my heart because I've visited a lot of them and worked in them and all that sort of thing. But I was thinking just how much adversity can people have? And they have had more than their fair share. And here you are, a keynote note about resilience. So where does all that come from? It ties in here somewhere.
Yes, it does. For many years, when I was still living in Sydney. I've only just moved here permanently 18 months ago. But since I was 20, I have come back and forth for many different things. And I had an education not-for-profit where we did literacy programs and girls empowerment programs on this island, on the other side of this island, and one of the other islands down south called Tanna. And for 13 years we did that. We did literacy and numeracy packs, we did sponsorships, we did leadership programs, empowerment for teenage girls. We collaborated with an entire community on one of the remote islands to build a library from scratch, because we know that literacy is the foundation for life opportunities. It's not just being able to have the beautiful gift of reading books, which of course is such a pleasure and such a wonderful way to progress our language, but it also in later life allows us to be able to read a ballot form so we can vote for our governments. It allows us to read medicine so we can take what's right, and signage, and go to the hospital and fill out application forms and start a small business. All of that is based firstly on literacy. So with lots of consultation with the community, that's what we decided on. And it took us 2.5 years because we wanted everybody in the whole community to be a part of it. My husband was a builder and he kept saying, look, I'll bring the boys over, we'll have it done in a few weeks. But we know that never sustains itself, because we want pride and ownership from the people who are going to be using it. So we had, mamas shoveling coral from the beach to fill the concrete slab, and young men who were doing their carpentry license did their practical component on the build. And because I was project managing it, but I had no skill at all on what that meant as somebody who has never done building before. Stupid me hadn't thought that we would need a hose, because there's only one tap in the school, and where we needed to make concrete over near the slab was nowhere near that. So 50 giggling, dancing children, did this with a bucket for all day in the hot sun so we got enough water. And so everybody was involved, and we built this beautiful, not fancy pants, just this filled with love and joy and pride library, and filled it with culturally appropriate books. And we had a big opening, and it was incredible. But then, unfortunately, only months later, Vanuatu had its most catastrophic natural disaster at the time, Cyclone Pam, and it ruined everything, unfortunately. And so, I started, obviously we all learn different things through our lives, and we all have hardship, and each time we fall down and get back up, we build our resilience muscle a little bit more. And that was certainly one of those times for me. It was more that so much heart had been put into it, nothing to do with, we'd been fundraising for many years, and money can come again, you can fundraise again, but it was all the heart that went into it, which was just such a shame. But so we started fundraising again, raising enough money. I took the first leadership group back over for us to start the rebuild and start rebuilding not just the bricks and mortar, but more the spirit of the place, because 90% of the families had lost income and their food and water supply. So there was broken spirits everywhere, and we wanted to try and play a part in helping out with that. Unfortunately, though, we got caught up in some local cultural conflict that had nothing to do with us. And on our second night of that particular trip, we were sleeping soundly and proudly after a hard day's work, and petrol bombs were thrown at our bungalows with the intention to burn us alive, not because of us, but because they wanted a particular message to be heard, and that's how they knew that that would be heard if we were harmed or killed. So, I was sound asleep, but I heard this bang on my roof and woke up to find my whole room filled with smoke. And as I jumped up, I could just see some men running from my where I was sleeping with these big sticks of fire, and the car underneath my window was petrol bombed. As I ran out, everything was on fire, and so we're on a very isolated corner of a remote island in the Pacific. There's no 000 to call, so it was about midnight, and after evacuating everybody, we spent a very scary night just watching everything burn. And it was certainly a huge event for me. There was injuries for not just for me but for others, but as we know, people feel comfortable talking about the physical injuries that they see, but it's the emotional scars on the inside that people don't see and they don't feel comfortable talking about. And it was the first time I'd really realized that. I had a broken bone in my foot. I was on crutches. I had lung damage from from the smoke and everything. But I was close to broken, Mary. I had terrible PTSD. I had complete insomnia for over a year. My whole purpose in life had been around that community and doing what we were doing. My husband and I had never been able to have children. So when everybody asks you as a female, oh, so do you have kids? My answer was always no, but I've got 220 children in the Pacific in Vanuatu that, we do this, that and the other. And it kind of just easily deflected the conversation without anyone feeling uncomfortable. And yeah, I just felt that I'd lost so much. There was a lot of betrayals from different people, the police, people at the school, the Australian High Commission. I mean, they sent in 2 small planes to fly us out the next day to evacuate us because everything had gone. The whole island was volatile, and yeah, it was a very tough time, and I had to somehow eventually figure out a way to climb myself up from rock bottom. And I feel like the lessons that I learned from that were what shapes what I speak about now on stages around the world, because we all have petrol bomb moments, right? They come in all shapes and sizes. They're not often literal ones like mine, but people are victims of bullying and harassment in their workplaces. They get retrenched. There's a new leadership team that comes in and just shifts everything. There's grief, there's illness, there's injury, there's having to care for young children, parents. All these things are really tough. And it's not, when we've got everything else piled on us for the world that goes on, it's not, to me, a surprise that you can get to rock bottom quickly. What's important is having that awareness and to knowing how to intervene on yourself, whether that is things that you can do for yourself or whether that is to get professional help, because climbing out of it, that's what we want people to do. And that's what my intent is every day, to help people to do that. Will help people to get themselves strong, get themselves resilient before those big petrol bomb moments have, because they will for all of us. And if you haven't had one yet, unfortunately, I hate to tell you, but there will be a time, right? And that's just the way it is. We cannot control that. But what we can do is do everything when the good times are happening to make sure we're prepared enough for when those tough times occur.
That's right. Gosh, I like what you're saying about intervene on ourselves. It's such a lovely perspective to contemplate, because to intervene on ourselves does require awareness for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
sometimes, because it doesn't look like a petrol bomb, we undervalue it and we
yeah.
also dismiss it and oh, it was nothing. It was nothing, no. Um,
I'm okay.
yes, and I think that comparison or analogy is a good one because then when we have moments and they don't look like that, we don't actually have the wherefore to go, what is it
Mm,
I need? Because we're too
mm,
busy curling up, protecting ourselves. So I think you
yes.
have a very good point. And how did you get from rock bottom and make your way up to where you are now? Was there another moment that you captured that you held on to, or was it the environment? What would you say about that?
Well, I mean, I certainly had therapy, definitely. I had some medication for a little bit. I unfortunately PTSD is often treated with antidepressants, and depression is a kind of a symptom of PTSD, but it's different. So, but I was willing to try everything to help me. I think the greatest thing is that I had beautiful family and friends surrounding me and holding me. And, this is something I've learnt a number of times is that we need to build our kind of our resilience circle, the people who we can go to when things are tough. That is not everybody, because not everybody is capable of holding space for you and holding your pain.
Agreed.
So you need to know who those people are, and you need to build those connections and build the trust and make the deposits of your friendship and your connection and nurture that way before the hardship happens, because it's too late then. And you can't, it's reaching out to strangers or people that you've not had anything more than a surface level conversation with is not right for that time. And it's another lesson I really learnt, when I talk about that, the earthquake that happened here only 14 months ago, and I was here alone, but because I'd only been here for a few weeks, and didn't have my people yet. I'd met a couple at a couple of functions that we'd had surface level conversations, and it really occurred to me then that, wow, I don't know who to turn to. I had one neighbor who was remarkable, but I didn't have a circle of people, and there was no connection with the outside world. No one was thinking about that random girl they'd met at that bar that night. No one was checking on me. So that was really it's just such a big lesson for me in a different way now, that when you haven't done it and, it was out of my control, I was only new, I'd only arrived, but you've got to prioritize it. If you're moving somewhere different and you think about even people changing jobs, like prioritize someone, find that one to have a coffee with, because you just never know. Or if you're working remotely, again, really hard, right, to build that connection with people. But you've got to prioritize it.
I agree. And too often we see, and a place like Australia that is having massive, fires and then floods and, all of the
Yeah.
things that are going on. And people, I see it. Prepare, prepare, prepare. But, my observation is that sometimes we don't prepare because we don't believe that it's going to impact us and
Yeah.
that we'll be right kind of thing. Oh, no, that wouldn't happen to me. And
Yeah.
so there's no consideration, but this whole notion of let's build this now so that if anything happens, then you and me, we then can work together to help whoever is the person, because I'm
Yeah.
big on cheer squads, and this is a
Yes.
little bit of a different take on that. But
Mm.
I think you have to, I like what you're saying. I would say you have to choose wisely. You
Yeah.
have to choose people that you are connected to. I think the fundamental here is about connection, isn't it? You
It
need
really is.
people, what's that saying? You really get me. That's what you
Yeah.
need,
Yes. Sure.
because
Mm.
out there, people don't ever imagine that I'm going to need this group.
No.
And I don't know about you, but the older I get, Heidi, the more I realize that what I formed back then is actually holding me now, which is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Got to do it early.
I
Connection's
agree.
not, it's not built over one dinner. It's built through layers and layers of conversations and vulnerability and being genuine and asking better questions and all of that. That's what we need for that cheer squad to be there for us when we need them.
Yes. You touch on so many important things there, vulnerability. And that's one of the big things, isn't it? In many
Yeah.
cultures, that vulnerability is weakness, it's this, it's that. And even now, because we're not 21, I've witnessed it, that vulnerability is seen in so many different ways. And I've got the saying about vulnerability in strength and strength in vulnerability.
Mm.
And that's what we learn, isn't it? If we decide to make meaningful connections and have meaningful conversations, that's the biggest component, I think, to formulate what you're talking about. Is that your experience?
Yes, it is. And I mean, when I think back to after that earthquake, because I hadn't had a chance to have those meaningful conversations yet. And so anyone I spoke to afterwards, because they'd lived through here, and it's hard, it is hard living there, all these natural disasters and airlines going into liquidation and all the things that go on. The expression that was said to me so often was, "Oh, this is not my first rodeo." You just kind of get on that. And in the meantime, I'm completely unwilling because I don't know how to live without water and power and connection with anyone. And it's so hot and there's shit, excuse me, stuff everywhere. Like there's tomato cans that have burst and there's like mixed with coffee and oil on the floor and everything's revolting and there's glass and people just say, "This is not my first rodeo." You just got to get up and like keep on going. And it's like, oh gosh, am I ever going to fit in here? Like, because to me, this is an opportunity to be able to say to people, "Gosh, I'm really struggling," and I was saying that I'm wobbly, like far out. There was over 100 aftershocks, that significant ones, and I had a great big slip hole in my backyard. I'm on the side of a cliff, and the engineer said it's only a matter of time before that land goes down the hill. It's not a matter of if it will, it's a matter of when. And to not be able to say to someone, I feel really scared here by myself. I don't know what to do. And that is what we're saying, just to build that early. So you've been able to find amongst the group, like even in a close girlfriend group, to me, there's different people for different situations. Not everyone's right for the same situation.
That's right. And this is not my first rodeo is one way of dealing with it,
It
right?
is.
It
It
is
is.
it's
Yeah.
one avenue to get us through the slippery slopes and the very, very wobbly days that follow. And more often than not, we need more than that. I think that helps initially in the shock phase because we do get up and we go, "What the hell just happened?"
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the actual healing, because when as soon as you said 100 aftershocks, I was like, "Wow, talk about hypervigilant." You'd be waiting, wouldn't you?
yeah,
Like your whole
yeah,
body, you're having a huge somatic response from just this
yeah.
waiting, and
Mm,
it's one of those things that sometimes, and I think we've had this discussion before, do you have to have these experiences to actually learn resilience? And what you're doing in your work is you're teaching people to think about it way before they need it. But I would imagine that too often you're in an environment speaking where a lot of those people you're speaking to have already had incidents, and probably too many,
yeah, for
that
sure.
you're then giving them a roadmap of how to emerge out of it. Whether they actually know that to be true or not is another thing, but
Yeah, and I think also because at various times in our lives, we I feel like we have these seasons that are really tough, and then we have these seasons that are much lighter and okay. And I think what I try to talk about for that particular component of what I do in that preparing for them is that if we're in a good season, this is the time to think about preparing better for the next season we know is not going to be good. And if we've already gone through a tough time, which every single person has, of course, it's just degrees of it, but I don't like to compare because it's all relative. I losing my cat when I was 15 felt like the hardest thing I'd ever experienced in my entire lifetime, because it was for me then. So that's allowed, right? I don't need to compare against
no.
somebody who's in a war-torn country somewhere else in the world. For me, right then and there, I was just devastated. So I think this is where if we've had a tough time and we have known that we hadn't done the preparation, hopefully as evolved humans, we go, oh, I'm having one of these good seasons right now, but I know how tough it can be. So what's the one thing I can put into my day, into my discipline as a habit, as a ritual that I know will set me up for my future? My future self will thank me later on that I've done this now. And I think that's the key to it.
Yes, exactly. And while you were saying this, I was thinking about Vanuatu and that 20-year-old girl and what a privilege education was. And then you went on to tell the story about your not-for-profit, and then the privilege again of being able to read and hold a book
Yeah.
that now in the world we live, not many people do that, but nonetheless it's still a delicious thing and a privilege and something that lots of people around the world have absolutely no idea that exists.
Yeah.
And so this is where I think education, everything about you is education in terms of back then, which was more like defined as education, but here you are now helping people to make sense of their privilege where they are contextually
Mm,
now and to
mm,
prepare. Because I think I've certainly been watching over the years that people certainly recover from different trauma, and losing your cat, for me, losing a dog early, those kind of things are all
yeah.
important. And yet we give these values, don't we? Which is why we dismiss
Yeah.
that you shouldn't be feeling like this because, and that
Yeah.
happens here. Um,
Yes.
but I think it's vital what you're doing, and it's integral for people to lead a fuller life.
Yeah. It is. There's only one of them.
Well, that's right. There's
Yeah.
no door that you go through and pop yourself back. Here I am.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, that we know of anyway, right? So we can't risk that.
so far I haven't seen it. Yes, but So where is this all taking you? What's your vision now?
Yeah, well, maybe, to me, with the education, education changes lives. That's been my whole part of my life, from being a little girl, watching my parents who were just in service of people all the time. Dad was a policeman, mum was a teacher, but dad was in Rotary, mum was in View Club. They were doing the Bunning sausage sizzles, they're always in service of others. And I think it's just part of what I know is how to make a better world by being kind and generous to others in the littlest way you can. It doesn't have to be big, big, big things. And if you can, I volunteer down at a little primary school now once a week, and we just do a reading class. I sit on the floor with the children and read them stories, and then they read it back to me. And just to see their faces light up is just such a treasure. And sometimes I think, oh God, I don't have time for this. I don't have time, right? And many times, actually, I feel that way, to be honest. But I get down there, and I know deep in my heart that, like, these little moments, like my little moment of my entire life of 3 months here, was this changing thing for me. And I think we've all had experiences throughout our lives where one person has just helped change a path, even by 1%, and it's made us better. And I just think, if these children know that there's somebody who cares enough to read them a story and have this beautiful gift of storytelling, for one, but helping with literacy.
It's
How
massive.
lucky! How lucky am I?
Yes, that's right. And you're giving them your attention, your time, and you're right. You hear that so often. I just don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think you were talking earlier about priorities, and it is all about prioritizing what's important, firstly for you, because that has to be the first thing, and then
yes.
what do I need to do next? And you've got a bit of a saying that we were talking about before we went to recording, of how to get through various things and events in our lives. Would you like to share that with the audience?
Yeah, it's actually stuck on behind my computer here, so I remember it every day when when everything feels a bit overwhelming, and I think, oh gosh, I don't know what to do next, because I don't know if anything I do works. Is anyone listening out there to anything I want to say? Like, what's the point? And I'm sure your listeners get into those moments of just feeling stuck and procrastinating. And so I've got it there, and it's not my saying. It's actually one from an ex All Blacks player who now is worked in the mental health space, called Sir John Kerwin. And it's dot, then dat. DOT, then DAT. Do one thing, then do another thing. And I can't tell you how much this has changed my world, because I'm a great list writer and I've got a lot of to-dos all the time. And sometimes when I'm in that stuck feeling and I look at my to-do list, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't. Look how long it is. But if I just do one of those things and tick it off and get that beautiful hit that you get from a tick, and then I do another thing, that's just a momentum that keeps me moving forward. And I teach this now, always putting credit back to him. But whether that one thing is a big thing or a little thing, it just keeps momentum going. And that's what we need to be able to reach the place that we want to reach, whatever that is for any of us.
Yes, yes. And I loved what you were saying there, because it's quite simplistic. Give it a tick.
Yeah.
I've got a thing in my calendar that I tick things, and I love that feeling. At the end of the day, I go, oh, I've done well,
Yeah.
and I giggle, because I think, oh, really, Mary. But it's all about the simplicity of things, and also it puts a smile on my face as well. But
Yes.
it then moves us to the next thing. The old
Yeah.
art of compartmentalization is very alive there, isn't it? But
Yeah.
I think what you're saying and what he's taught is the same thing. And it seems so much, just be here, just be here. You don't have to be there. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the way the world is, I might have said that a couple of times today, but it's really got me reflecting about it, that
Yeah.
there's so much fragmentation going on with
Mm.
communication, caring, kindness, because there's way too much being asked of us. At
Yeah.
any point in time, someone's always wanting a piece. It doesn't matter what you do,
Yeah.
someone's wanting a
Yeah.
piece of you. And
Yeah.
so it's important to have the connections to feel whole,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
quite often we're not whole because we're being pulled, you know. And
Yes.
the other thing I love about what you're saying is that you're someone who has never squandered an opportunity. And I love that about you. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And you demonstrate it over and over again is take that and
Mm.
take that. And I hope that that deeply inspires people listening to this or watching this, you know, really, Heidi. It's a beautiful thing. Is there one last gift you'd like to give us today from all your wisdom and experience?
Well, I think it probably leads from what you've just said, which was a beautiful thing for you to say. Thank you, Mary. That's made me really feel very warm that you've said that to me. But I do have a favourite saying, and that is, if it's going to be, it's up to me. You know, it's simple, but it is the truth. Yeah, and of course, if we have our connections early, there are people to support us. There are people to help us out when we need them. But really, our path in life is all based on the decisions and the choices that we make, and we can either choose to live our life by default, just letting these, you know, these challenges that we can't control take us on a path that leads us somewhere unfulfilling because we have just kind of said, oh, well, that's how life's dealt me. Or we can find the courage to make some intentional and a lot of the time very difficult decisions and choices. So we can move towards something that is right for us. It's in alignment with us. And, you know not everyone would want to be sweaty in the tropics like I am, but I love it. And, there were a lot of milestones to tick off to get there. It didn't happen easily. And coming back here after surviving a violent crime and all, it was hard, but it was something I always wanted to do. So I knew that if it was going to be, it had to be to me. I had to do the work up here first, and then I had to do a lot of admin and do bureaucracy. So
yes, that would have been the hard bit, not the up here. You were used to handling that. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So, yeah, I don't think, I suppose it's like those overnight rock stars or whatever. It's never overnight, right? There's a lot of work that goes into anything, and we're the only ones that can do it for ourselves.
Absolutely, and that's true. I'll reiterate that again, that it takes time, it takes building, and it takes getting up and doing it again and again and again. It's never, I mean, you do, I'm laughing because you still see that, oh, this person, went from this, he's a unicorn. And it's like, no, hang on a minute, let's go back. And yeah, so I think that's beautiful. Look, I thank you so much for your time. It's been a treat. I feel like we could continue for much longer to bring all of this, but I know that you're speaking, and there's lots of people have an opportunity to hear and experience the beauty of your knowledge. I'm going to call it that because it's beautiful what you're sharing. It's lovely. And the opportunity for others to grow from your experience. And I don't know, there's so much heart in it. I thank you so much for showing us that today. It's just been lovely.
Thank you, Mary. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you for joining us on The Richness of Our Lives. If today's conversation stirred something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Connect with me on social media, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are ready to step into your own bold journey, join our vibrant Cheer Squad. We meet weekly for coaching and connection. Until next time, continue to embrace the richness of your life. I'm Mary Scott, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.